The Quarantine Chronicles.
Welcome to Rage Against the Mainstream, your full spectrum source for all things music, insight, and opinion. This is another installment of your new favorite miniseries, The Quarantine Chronicles. This is Quarantine Chronicles number 5 on May 11th, 2020. How you guys doing today?
I'm good.
Doing swell. Quite swell.
Nice. Has anyone found anything new or interesting in the past week?
I finally caved and I've been listening to the new Fiona Apple album, Fetch the Bolt Cutters.
Nice. When did that come out?
Like a couple weeks ago, April 17th.
Oh, nice.
Looking at the Wikipedia.
Sweet. Friends
If I had to pick a standout track, I'd probably go Cosmonauts.
Nice.
Cosmonaut.
I'm going to have to give that a listen. I've always liked Fiona.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Cosmonauts.
We have plenty of time on our hands. I mean, there's no excuse not to listen to it at this point in
there's literally
time.
nothing else to do.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Bill?
Speaking of new music, friends of the podcast, Aleca, they released their new single, Cabal,
the banger.
on Friday, or, the Friday that just passed. It really kind of tickles my fancy. I know you think it's a little bit more on the core side, Steve, but I mean, At the end of the day, to have a band, I mean, they're about 2.5 hours from us, but I mean, still technically kind of local. I mean, they do play the smaller venues and stuff.
I know of it, I got a friend who's in this band called Strychnia, who they're on Apple Music and stuff, same way you can find Aleca, and they're kind of the same way. I appreciate the music, and I was listening to that song when you showed me the other day, and obviously, the guitar work's excellent, the production's excellent, the technicality in it is excellent, the drumming was what really, really impressed me. But yeah, I mean, even it doesn't really fit my general core of taste. It's still listenable, because I'm a huge fan of death metal and all things death metal, so it's easier for me to kind of rationalize and enjoy a band like that. But I always have that fine line at Black Dahlia Murder, Lamb of God, but still, for me, even so, to say it's a good song, it's a good song.
Actually, I don't know if I had ever told you before or if you heard the episode, but RJ actually filled in Incognitive for a tour.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he had played Incognitive for, I think it was 2 weeks or something, where Shane couldn't go out, and he toured the West Coast with Cognitive back last year, the year before.
That's funny.
But
what do you
shout
got,
out
Steve?
to my boy HBL over there. Little young Ingve. And something new too, just because Bill brought it up with death metal. 80s Polish death metal band Vader, who's been around obviously for quite some time releasing music. It's really weird. I look up when new albums are coming out, especially when on the heels of the new Lamb of God approaching, with Black Dahlia Murder approaching. But underground and even just extreme metal in general, it's hard to find a list of upcoming albums where it really tells you everything. Yeah. So I was just scrolling through music, and I clicked on Vader one day because I wanted to see if they had their first album, because it's still not on here on Apple Music. And there it said new album May 1st, and I'm like, what the fuck? So obviously I checked that out. And it's crazy when you see some of these older bands of if you're not a fan of death metal, I mean, it's going to go way under the radar for you. But a lot of bands that I'm interested in putting out new music, especially being around that long and that quality of music, fucking album's excellent. I was actually really impressed with it for 2020 death metal from a 80s band. But
yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
That shit's in. It goes in, dude. You'll like it.
One thing I always thought about death metal was it's kind of different in other genres, and in other genres you're kind of making simple music and trying to make the best possible simple catchy combination, but with death metal, since it's more based on skill, you're kind of and ridiculous skill, you can get better as you go on.
Well, that's the thing. That's the trick. It's every death metal band had it in mind, where it's let's see how many times we can change our time signatures. Let's see how fast we can play these drums, and let's see how many riffs we can fit into one song.
Yeah, exactly.
And the physicality is the only thing that could hold you back from theoretically not getting better or whatever.
But that's really the fine line as well, because a lot of these bands that incorporate that style, you're either going to sound awful or you're going to sound really well put together. That's why I always relate back to Death, because Death was one of those bands especially in their progressive years where they started to become more technical and away from that just traditional death metal sense. And it fucking worked. Like the amount of talent that was put into that, the amount of differences in their, like the riff changes and the time signatures, it worked. It fucking worked brilliantly.
Well, what I always thought about with death metal is, you know, it's not really as much of the brutality as most other, you know, metal subgenres is, but yeah, it doesn't have to do with the brutality of it. It has to do with, like Connor was saying, the technicality aspect of it, and like pretty much how, like, fitting 10 pounds of shit into an 8-pound bag. Like that's pretty much death metal as a whole.
And it's like every genre. Like if someone, like if you went and looked at guys from like the Minutemen or the Descendants, you wouldn't think that they were punk rockers, because most cliche people picture Sid Vicious when people say punk rock. The Ramones, exactly. And same thing with grunge. Like if you look at like some of 90s bands like Helmet and like other bands that kind of just dressed like 90s regular people, you know, because they didn't fit that criteria, you would assume like that can't be that type of band. And then as well is like Cannibal Corpse. Cannibal Corpse is what really put a generic staple on what people expect from death metal. That's the first reaction. Oh, this song's probably about fucking babies.
Yeah.
Probably what every death metal song is probably about, when, you know, obviously that's not the case. But I think Cannibal Corpse is when it really like put a generic label on what most people imagine when you hear the term death metal.
Well, that's the thing too. Cannibal Corpse is like an extreme example of the genre.
Definitely.
And, you know,
it's crazy. Cannibal Corpse goes back to the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if you think a lot of those bands that came out in that time, I mean, the late 80s, the Florida scene, I mean, yeah, Cannibal Corpse, because they're still so relevant, the fact that they've been around since pretty much all of them, especially when it kind of hit more of like a mainstream concept where death metal was actually more recognized.
Have you guys ever heard of Cannabis Corpse?
Of course.
I have not.
They're like super satirical death metal. It's actually
Members
pretty
of
good. I'm not even gonna lie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's like a Steel Panther for death metal.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
I always like.
Yeah, you'll have to check
like
them out. They've been around for actually quite some time. You'll have to check them out.
Awesome.
06. I'm on the Wikipedia.
Something else.
That's
too.
my new catchphrase.
What, Cannabis Corpse or Wikipedia?
No, I'm on the Wikipedia.
Another
Are you
thing,
contributing more to the Bush page? Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Not lately. I found out actually my username has been suspended. I have to take it up. I forget the bloke's name, but he's in for some shit.
Another thing for new or interesting too is I was dicking around on YouTube, as I normally do, where I find everything that I recommend, and me and the wife were sitting down, and I put on like "We Are the World." Everyone knows that song. Michael Jackson, Lionel Richie, you know, Huey Lewis, fucking Bruce Springsteen, you name it, they're in the song. We were talking about like vocalists and stuff, and, you know, like people being really good, and they had the recording session that Michael Jackson did for "We Are the World," and it had no music, and it was him singing in the room by himself. And dude, it was one of those things where the fucking hair stood up on your arms, and like it was just like for
who was this? I'm sorry,
Michael Jackson.
Okay, it was Michael Jackson.
Yeah, it was one of those like times, like we talk about it, or we've mentioned it countless times about, you know, like forgetting or looking past all the crazy shit. And it was like one of those moments to where when you heard his voice come on, it was just like you forgot about every accusation and allegation against him. And it was like, this fucking dude is the fucking man. But regardless, I went on to watch the "We Are the World" 1985 behind the scenes DVD rip on YouTube, and it basically just went through what went into making and producing and recording the song. That song was recorded in one night over the span of like almost 13 hours.
Damn.
And it happened right after the AMAs. Almost every person that was on that song had attended the AMAs that night and had gotten rides.
And they probably just got roped into it.
Well, no, this was set up prior, and I guess they had studio time that was booked, and the AMAs just so happened to happen that night. And they literally...
well, that's probably genius. They They might have done that around the AMAs. They might have been like, oh shit, everyone's going to be in town.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
and they literally took limousines right from there, right from wherever it was held to the studio. And everyone was just piled in the room, and it just happened. I think Michael Jackson was the only one not to go because he was recording. And I'm telling you,
Michael Jackson was like, I got to get us ready.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, if you guys get the chance, I highly suggest to watch it. It's like 56 minutes, and it's just incredible. This
quarantine has really had me digging the hour-long YouTube videos.
I'm telling you, if you're into hour-long YouTube videos, this is the one to watch. Just type in
the concept of YouTube
1985 behind the scenes.
Is still like my favorite thing about the internet, I think. Like just being able to like basically watch whatever TV you want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you think about like if we would have lived in like 1995, like bro, you would have maybe seen like one or two Metallica interviews in your life on TV.
Yeah, if
you know what I mean. Yeah, you would have had to have like known they were going to be on Headbangers Ball and shit, or caught a rerun and got lucky. You know what I mean? You didn't have TV Guide. You know what I mean? It wasn't like you could like go and like look to see when it was going to be on. Even you know what I mean? You had to just be like watching MTV or VH1 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And just catch that it was going to be on, and then catch it again.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Speaking of,
I love YouTube.
Oh my God, YouTube's the shit. Speaking of going back in time, are we ready to do On This Day in Mini Music History?
Born ready.
All right, start us off, Connor. Good old 1970.
1970, the soundtrack for the movie Woodstock is released, featuring recordings from the festival. Those who were there realized it didn't sound nearly as good as they remembered it. Credence. I think John Fogerty never authorized the release of their live show that night because he always thought it was a subpar Credence performance.
That's insane. Yeah. I think we had talked about this before. Like, the idea of a subpar Credence show is like our idea of like having our best show.
Well, it's crazy because, dude, John Fogerty's been doing the live streams and stuff with like his kids, and like they're killing it. And it's like, how the hell could the actual Credence not kill it at Woodstock?
Yeah,
I'm gonna tell you though, man, the album that was obviously released, it actually was released in 2019 of their Woodstock set.
Oh, well, it only took, what, 50 years?
Yeah, but I mean, they must have done a lot of decent amount of polishing on that album because, I mean, I've listened to it, and, I mean, it's not horrible. It's not like the way they're making it seem.
Yeah, I feel like I've listened to it on YouTube before just to see what, because that's like kind of like a famous thing in Woodstock lore is that Credence like thought they bombed or whatever.
I just think the set list organization was kind of fucking out there, though. It was all over.
Yeah, I think it's more just their sound wasn't the best. It wasn't their fault, really.
Yeah,
and if you're playing and you know the sound isn't good, it becomes very like draining. You know what I mean? You just don't feel like doing it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It says on the old Wikipedia, CCR was the first act to sign a contract for August Woodstock Festival in '69. Guess how much that contract was?
The contract itself, or how much they got paid back in the day?
How much they got paid for that for signing the contract? Close, $10,000, which is equivalent to $70,000 US today.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to take us into 1972. John Lennon goes on the Dick Cavett show and mentions that the FBI is monitoring him. He turns out to be right.
He's full of shit. He is the FBI.
So, what do we got 9 years later in 1981, Steve?
1981, the beloved Bob Marley dies at the age of 36 after a long battle with cancer. Bob Marley, it's funny because Bob Marley to me is like the same way I treat Frank Zappa. I mean, his greatest years were with the Wailers. I think Bob Marley and the Wailers is probably it's just undeniable music.
Oh, his solo music is undeniable too.
It is, but just you get such a different aspect when he was with the Wailers. I think like Bob Marley and the Wailers just does something for me more than, because I think it's just a lot of his stuff like growing up was so overplayed for me as a kid, and like all the posters and everybody like wanted to like, oh, I smoke weed at the age of 13, so I have a Bob Marley poster. I'm gonna have to hang this up.
Yeah.
Like it got so overdone for me that. I mean, going back now and like really diving into like the deeper cuts by Bob Marley, it's just I found a newfound respect in listening to his early albums with like the Wailers and stuff.
I can agree with that.
For my family, Bob Marley was church music. We literally listened to it every Sunday morning growing up.
Really? You're not kidding?
Yep. I'm not kidding.
Huh.
Listen to Bob Marley I thought Bob Marley was church music until I was like 11 or 12.
See, that I can respect, not just the individuals that like the Rasta colors and immediately equated that to like being cool and like, you know, a rebel.
I thought it was literally just like ethnic church music that my dad liked. Like, I liked it. I was like, Bob Marley's great, but I thought it was church music because it was all awesome. Like, could you be loved?
Could you be loved? Yeah.
That's a truth tree moment there for Connor.
Truth tree. Connor thought Bob Marley was church music. That shit was the gospel.
Yeah, it was gospelless, if that's a word.
So,
don't think it is.
Lastly, in music history, in 1990, the late Richie Valens is finally awarded a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I find that to be bullshit. Like that it took that long for him to get a star.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I agree that it is bullshit, but I can totally understand why. You know, his career was cut so short, and at the same exact time, it's, you know, you got to think about what goes into doing something like that through his estate and whatever. I don't know the logistics and what it takes to get a fucking star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Yeah, there probably has to be some sort of campaign for it from some sort of interest group or something.
Yeah, well, because I'm sure like it's the same thing with like, you know, sports Hall of Fames. Like you see guys that like, oh, that's going to be a Hall of Famer, and they take years and years going through, you know, ballots and stuff and not making the cut, and then it takes them like so many years to eventually get there. I mean, the Hall of Fame or the Walk of Fame is obviously quite different in the sense that there's no real public exposure on what it takes to actually get your, you know, name on that, you know, sidewalk.
Well, the reason I'm saying it's bullshit is because I've been fielding emails from the California government about getting Rage Against the Mainstream a spot on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We're actually going to be right out.
It's ridiculous we're not already there.
Yeah, dude, tell me about it.
Yeah, and we got to get on this whole like Instagram thing. We can't even get our name legitimized. I don't even understand what that's all about. Well, I just want that blue check mark. Is that so fucking hard to ask?
Yeah, that's all I want. That's all we want is a blue check mark.
Yo, what's even happening right now? Do we have a topic today, Bill? I know we're kind of like in the quarantine process here, but
yeah, the topic
no
for
need
today
to totally derail
is something that we have talked about this separately, not on the show ever. Is like when bands play unplugged, and I don't mean just like MTV's Unplugged or Live in New York or none of that other shit. When you see a band and they play an acoustic set or an unplugged set,
stripped down. We can say like stripped down.
Yeah, stripped down.
Wait. Didn't we do a vote between Nirvana and Alice in Chains, and Alice in Chains somehow won?
No.
It was Alice in Chains lost by like a couple votes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I feel like that was bullshit. Anyways.
No, it wasn't. All right, moving on. Whatever.
Moving on. We've already argued about this. Do you feel like Unplugged Performances can show a good or a bad band? By what I mean is, like, do you feel like this could, like, let's say, like, for instance, you have a band that's like extremely good and they're extremely good live, but their songs just aren't made for like an unplugged type setting. Do you feel like this could help or hurt like an artist?
So I always bring back to like live shows going back all the way to like the era of the Beatles and moving forward to even like hip hop in like the mid 2000s, early 2000s, where a lot of it was still strictly based on talent and not presence. Like nowadays, you go to a concert or something, and if it's an older band, you're going to get the same type of expectation that they've been putting out for years. If it's a newer artist, a lot of it's based on the notoriety, the presence, and they don't typically put on a show that they, where you're seeing the exposure of talent. But then I noticed there's a lot of artists, newer artists even, that have done unplugged sessions that really bring out either how bad they truly are in talent-wise, because they don't have the luxury of having a huge equipment set up, having roadies and tour, execs helping them out with their, sound setup and stuff. So you get to really see an intimate performance. And like, there are some bands to me that typically sound great on albums, typically sound great on live shows that were meant for DVD, that were planned out. And then they go out there and perform just an intimate, stripped down session, and you get to really see a different side of them. And some of those bands, I've seen Halsey do a stripped down performance of like Bad at Love, and it's fucking excellent. I seen Portugal the Man do a stripped down performance, and it was fucking awesome. I've even seen like Taking Back Sunday do like a stripped down performance of what you're not typically used to and hearing in their studio albums, and it was fucking awesome.
That's pretty cool.
And then obviously we've heard some recent ones. One we can definitely bring up being Puddle of Mud, where
I still think that he faked that. I think he did that. I'm no Puddle of Mud fan, but like I think he did that purposely, like cringeworthy.
But why would you do that? That's what I'm saying.
Because now people are talking about Puddle of Mud and arguing about. Yeah, but that's kind of like
that. See, that's the problem, man. If people are really doing shit like that at this point, where you're supposed to be like Puddle of Mud's no joke act. They're not like Primus.
No,
you know what I mean? With the intent to be satirical, but you're gonna go out
there
and
kind of way more of a joke than Primus, I'd say.
I think a joke in the sense that they actually. They're seeing
they
like
take
serious.
Themselves seriously. I think.
That's what I mean. I think you could say a joke in the sense of like a band that goes out there actually trying to perform and be serious about it, and putting out terrible music. Yeah, it's fucking awful. It's like trap.
Dude, don't
put them in the same league as trap.
Yeah, I'll take. Like I'm no trap fan either, but I'll take Headstrong over.
She hates me.
Anything Puddle of Mud ever did. Yeah. She
true.
fucking hates me. Yeah, like oh my god.
However, you can't deny. You can't deny. Like,
Puddle of Mud's is probably worse than Nickelback.
You think Puddle of Mud's worse than Nickelback?
Yeah.
You think?
What about Imagine Dragons?
Imagine Dragons takes the cake, dog.
Yeah, Imagine Dragons is probably my least favorite band of all fucking time.
Yeah, they're really that bad.
I
hate their
Imagine
sound.
Dragons.
I actually seen it. It's funny. I actually saw. Now that we mention them, I saw a stripped down performance of them back in like I want to say 2014.
Sounds terrible.
And dude, like there's just some bands that not only are they bad, but then they go out there and it's just not good. I mean, even like, for instance, but then there's other bands that I don't like and that do live performances and you get to see and actually appreciate it. Like, for instance, like the band Shinedown. I don't know if you remember Shinedown.
Yeah.
When they did that performance, they actually did it live on a radio. I think it was 93.3 or 102.9. I remember they did Simple Man cover.
Oh, that was MMR.
Yeah, they played that on the radio a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing. When I first heard it, I severely enjoyed it. I was like, all right, I'm not even a huge fan of Shinedown. I don't like their fucking studio work, but that was a great cover. You got to see these guys actually have some talent behind them. But then it became like a fucking song. Like now I hear it all like
one song that when they first came out that was all right, and then they sucked all after that. Yeah. I don't like their singer really. I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like they try too hard to be like a southern rock sort of sounding kind of band.
Do they have a song that's like the sound of something? No. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe are you thinking of Disturbed, The Sound of Silence?
Yeah, that might be it.
That fucking cover. Don't even get me started with that shit.
About, like,
I don't want this to become a cover thing because like that's terrible.
Yeah.
I honestly almost thought about picking that for the 30-day challenge just to fuck with everybody.
I wanted to bring up Pearl Jam in this segment though. So I'm not a big fan of Pearl Jam's Unplugged performance from 1992. Their official
I really don't understand
MTV
why,
Unplugged.
but carry on.
You like it?
I love it.
Okay, I don't know. It's for me. I'm just not crazy about it. Like I
thought Black was good.
I never go to it.
Dude, the State of
I
Love and
thought they
Trust.
did it too early in their career.
I agree.
That's my problem.
I agree.
All right,
I think because they only did like 5 or 6 songs. A couple of them weren't that great, in my book. And if they would have waited till like 96 to do Unplugged, or like 97, they would have got shit because they would have been doing it after Nirvana did it.
Yeah.
But they at least should have done it a second time or something. But then what I was getting at with this too was that Into the Wild I love. So like later on, you know, Eddie Vedder, I think later on was more suited towards the Unplugged setting.
Oh, well, it's funny you mention that because I remember when that soundtrack came out. You had showed me
on CD.
Yeah, and after like doing that later on, I think I brought it up to my fiance at one point and mentioned that album because we were listening to Pearl Jam and shit. So she wound up diving in and like she sent me that album, the ukulele songs that he released in 2011.
Yeah, I never listened to that one.
And yeah, he's totally. You could even hear, like, even going to Vitalogy, like, you got to see, like, a different side of Pearl Jam and the ability, and then, obviously, Eddie Vedder doing his solo stuff with the Into the Wild soundtrack, and then hearing that Ukulele Songs album, I mean...
Did you like Ukulele Songs?
What?
Did you like Ukulele Songs?
I'm going to tell you right now, it's not... if you like the Into the Wild soundtrack, I think you'll enjoy it.
Yep.
Okay.
But if you're just a fan of Pearl Jam, I don't think you'll enjoy it. Put it that. I mean, if you like new Pearl Jam, you probably will.
Oh,
but
God.
You gotta like appreciate Eddie Vedder's solo shit before you actually can listen to that because it's totally different.
Definitely not as good as Into the Wild, though.
No. I don't compare it to that. It's different. It's all ukulele track. Every song's with a ukulele.
Into the album Into the Wild really was something special.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Unlike Gigaton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of grunge, I definitely want to bring up Alice in Chains' Unplugged. Now,
of course you do.
Yeah, well, dude, I mean, let's be real for a second. Alice in Chains put out a full acoustic album that everyone knows as Jar of Flies. I do
twice. Don't forget Sap.
Yeah, and Sap. But I do feel like Alice in Chains may have had an unfair advantage opposed to other bands that had done Unplugged sessions before due to the fact that fucking about 70% of their catalog is done on acoustic guitars and acoustic instruments. I mean, I don't...
Yeah, that's, I think, why I never really cared for Alice in Chains Unplugged that much. I have it. I've had it for years. I've probably listened to it like 3 times.
I think
it just
what
never
gets
calls me.
I think what really gets me about that, I mean, because we always debate that and Nirvana.
I'd rather listen to Sap and Jar of Flies.
Yeah, like Nirvana's to me is just because of how different it was, introducing the covers, bringing on the Meat Puppets. Obviously, you know, Jesus Don't Want Me for a Sunbeam. I mean, all the different, you know, aspects that they brought to the stage and just the quality of the performance. But the thing about Alice in Chains is because we talking about with Pearl Jam, where they did it so early in their career, Alice in Chains also had it to play everything. They had their entire discography at their disposal. Yeah. And I think that's what really did it because the track listing for that is an album where it's over an hour long and every fucking song is enjoyable.
Every
but again,
song.
I think every song. But again, it's the same thing where it's like you can say the same thing about Nirvana's. It's just Nirvana does something different.
Yeah.
Nirvana's was shorter. It was sweeter. It was just, I think, just sounded better. I think it just flowed better. But, I mean, I'm never going to deny, like, saying one's better than the other, I mean, it's like debating, you know, ribeye or porterhouse. I'm going to eat both of them. One of them may be better, but I'm going to fucking eat them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean...
Like, they're both good, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. What you all just said was correct in my book.
Like, I don't know. I've always felt like Nirvana has been, like... I'm not going to say to, like, the point of the Beatles with the over-bloatedness of their...
Well, at least Nirvana wrote their own material.
Well, that too. But like, I'm not going to sit here and say like, you know, like Nirvana was completely overblown and they weren't really that good. But I've gotten to this argument with both of you guys before. I just don't feel like as a band individually, they were better than any of the other Seattle bands, like, period.
Well, particularly on Unplugged, you got Chris Novoselic playing like accordion. You got like fucking
I forgot
Maury
about
Goldston
that.
on cello, like the whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I forgot
like,
about that.
There's some shit, bro.
I feel like what
meat puppets.
What could have put Alice in Chains' over the edge probably would have been if they would have had all the instrumentals for I Stay Away.
Alice in Chains should have said fuck it and brought on like some other grunge motherfucker.
They should have did fucking
Like,
Right Turn. That's what they should have did.
Yeah, if they would have had Chris Cornell on for Right Turn, that would have been some shit.
You know, that's always what annoyed me when I saw, you know, that infamous story of me going to see Soundgarden and them not playing Black Hole Sun. What also annoyed me was that Alice in Chains was on the same bill and they didn't do Right Turn. Like, that shit annoyed me probably even more than Black Hole Sun. Like, you have the opportunity right in here.
He might not have wanted to do it without Lane.
That's a possibility.
Chris.
Now, here's the thing, though. See, when we talk about these albums, like, I mean, you know, already being fans of Alice in Chains, already being fans of Nirvana, it's like those albums don't see, like, it's different. Like, a lot of unplugged albums can, like, make or break an artist. I mean, even if Nirvana or Alice in Chains had put out a shit one, it wouldn't really change my mind so much on the albums they had already put out because I appreciate the music. Yeah. And then there's other artists that I don't like that do an unplugged session and I hear it from a different sound and I'm like, wow, these guys are actually fucking talented. It's pretty good music. Because I'll never limit myself to genre. Like, when we talk about especially the grunge scene, like, I was always a huge fan of Stone Temple Pilots. Like, I always liked Core. You know, I always liked Purple, but I never could really put them in the same league for a period of time. And then when I heard that Unplugged album and especially saw the video of it, you know, the way they did Sex Type Thing, that song Andy Warhol that they do off of there, and like hearing a totally different, I mean, but just hearing a totally different sound from them and still producing like a quality element, like that really put me over the top with like Scott Weiland and that entire band.
Oh yeah, I can agree
hearing
with that.
Unplugged. You know, that's like one of those few unplugs of a band that I already appreciated, like maybe appreciate them even fucking further.
Now, what about like I know Connor doesn't really care for this particular artist that much, but with the likes of like Eric Clapton and his Unplugged, do you feel like having like a veteran, like I guess, you know, like legacy artist to be able to do an Unplugged? Do you feel it's just kind of like one of those like jerk off sessions? Like, we already know that you're Eric Clapton. You really didn't need to do this.
Exactly.
Well, see, this is the problem. Like, Eric Clapton gets put in the same league as like a Tom Brady or a fucking LeBron James. You're going to hate on him because the guy is successful and he did what he did. But at the same time,
he's a fucking dickhead.
He is a dickhead at the end of the day, dude. But I don't put it in a league where it's like, dude, if I like the music, I like the music. I like fucking Cream. I like Derek and the Dominoes, and I like a lot of his solo shit. The Unplugged he did, I mean, I think that is to put it more on a pedestal. Like, here, Eric Clapton. I mean, a lot of people, he's the greatest guitarist of all time.
People liked it because of Tears in
Heaven,
which is great. Like, it's nice that he made a song for his recently deceased young son. Yes. But realistically, I feel like that's pretty much why the album sold a bajillion copies.
Yeah. Well, also,
was the sentimentality surrounding that
Derek and the Dominoes classic a new life. Like, honestly, I hear the acoustic version of Layla on the radio more than I hear the original Derek and the Dominoes version.
Yep.
Yeah, I know, which is a shame because you're really cutting out Dwayne Allman on there, and it's like, and I put Dwayne Allman ahead of Eric Clapton on my list of greatest guitarists.
Right? Yeah.
So so it's like, Dwayne Allman smokes fucking Eric Clapton in my book.
100%.
Eric Clapton has like an impeccable feel. Like, that's the thing that sells Eric Clapton is his like absolute tone and feel of the instrument. Like we're all guitar players.
This is like Eric Clapton.
We can understand it.
Put it this way,
he's
Eric
like
Clapton
a
to me. Go ahead.
I feel like he's like a machine. I feel like he's just like one of the first like professional kind of guitarists.
Well, that's the thing. Okay. I think Eric Clapton though also had the luxury of being surrounded by a lot of talented musicians and acts, so that way when he established his solo career, he was already well known.
Oh yeah.
I mean, honestly, again, we're relating it to sports. I mean, a lot of these guys that we mentioned that are like all-stars in sports, if you look at some of their championship teams, they had a lot of assistants around them. I mean, Ginger Baker, it was like the heart and soul of Cream.
Yep.
I mean, come on. Dwayne Allman, Derek and the Dominoes. I mean, a lot of that stuff can't be done without the other musicians surrounding him.
He was also in the Yardbirds too, wasn't he?
And the Yardbirds, Jimmy Page. I mean, but the thing about that was, like, he had the luxury of that to be able to be built up and establish a foundation. I mean, a lot of these other guys that we talk about kind of were just put into the mix and made a name for themselves. I mean, you didn't see Jimmy Page bounce around from band after band.
Yeah, that's true.
I think Eric I think Jimmy Page actually replaced Eric Clapton in the Yardbird.
They literally were never on an album together. I think they recorded sessions, but separately for an album, but they were never in the band at the same time.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes total sense.
And then Jeff Beck was like the original guitarist from the Yardbirds,
played with
right?
Jimmy Page, but never played with Clapton. Or the other way around. I forget what it was, but all three of them were never there at the same time.
No.
Could you imagine if they were?
Well, Jimmy Page was a session musician in the 60s.
Yeah.
They all were, I think.
Could you imagine the music that would have been created if Page, fucking Clapton, and Beck were all in the same room together? Almost like a realistic...
all the raw talent prior to Cream, prior to Zeppelin.
I mean, like a realistic version of It Might Get Loud.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
It
was
Might Get
rough,
Loud
dude.
was weak.
White, man.
Yeah, it was rough, dude. Yeah. Wait, was that the
And
one
Edge.
with Edge?
Yeah.
Dude, when Jimmy Page was standing up there playing like Kashmir, I'm like, they're just staring at him. He's playing that riff over and over again. I'm like, dude, come on. Like,
The Edge is just shitting his pants.
that's like watching like a 14-year-old play Smoke on the Water. I can understand like the historic value behind it, but that scene did not need to go on for like 2 minutes.
Dude.
Then Jack White teaching him how to play Seven Nation Army.
The effects
Jesus
that the
Christ,
Edge
Jack White's
uses,
arrogant fuck ass on air, dude.
the effects that the Edge uses are all like expensive effects. You know what I mean? Like they're all like, oh yeah, I have like 5 different effects processors on my rack mount. You know what I mean? Type shit. You know what I mean?
I got 6 delays.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, cool, bro. Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like, we talk about guitar players that have like effects pedals and shit, like Tom Morello, for instance. He uses
fucking
these
Andy
pedals.
Summers is better on Walking on the Moon. Like, and he probably just used a simple delay pedal, that opening.
Yeah, but what I mean though is that you have a player like Tom Morello who has all these effects. And he uses the effects to his advantage to make new sounds and make music with them. The Edge, on the other hand, uses these pedals to make his playing sound better than what it is. He uses them as a crutch, not as a tool.
Yep.
I mean, I'm pretty sure if there's any U2 fans that are listening to this podcast, which I believe by this point we should have weeded them all out with our anti-U2 talk. But if there is any, I'm pretty sure we'll hear some flack about that one. The Edge sucks. Let's be real.
What's interesting to me is that, was there ever actually any U2 fans? Do you guys know any real U2 fans?
My mom was a
it all
U2
a conspiracy?
Fan, but early U2.
No, my dad's a Sunday Bloody Sunday fan, but he's not a U2 fan. Because I have this issue where my father, listens to Sirius XM, and anytime fucking Sammy Hagar or fucking U2 comes on the radio, and I'm like, Dad, let me just connect my Bluetooth and get this over with. He's like, no, I like the song. I'm like, Jesus, I have to deal with this now. So anytime Sunday Bloody Sunday comes on... I can understand
80s U2 fans.
Yes.
I like some 80s U2 stuff.
Okay.
But, like, people who got into U2, like, as they were coming out, like, I get it. Like, they were like, that was the entry of post-punk in America, basically.
It was cool.
There was nothing else getting played on the radio like that.
At the end of the day,
by the 90s, if you were still like an avid music fan and still repping U2,
shit for brains.
Bottom line, at the end of the day, Edge was a co-conspirator in the iPhone catastrophe of 2014, and therefore I refuse to give any respect to him or any of the equipment that he uses in making it sound.
All right.
That's on the record.
So reeling this back into the topic, I don't know how the fuck we got on the U2 topic
the
here.
Edge. Well,
we went from like, yo, like, do you like Unplugged? We went like, do you like Unplugged albums? So like, fuck Edge.
The Edge is why U2 never did an Unplugged album.
That's true.
Because you can't do U2 with Unplugged setting. Like, no way.
Reeling this back into the original topic, which was doing unplugged sessions or, stripped down sessions for artists. Do you feel like this is a fair way to be able to judge a band or artist or whatever? Or do you feel like, the studio is like the perfect setting to be able to determine, or a live setting? But do you feel like bands should be on a different level or judged due to their unplugged or stripped down settings?
This is what I kind of meant to Sorry. This is what I kind of meant to. I just realized this. This is what I kind of meant to get at with Pearl Jam. Was like, I'm not crazy about their Unplugged, but I don't think Unplugged's necessarily like make or break a band. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, honestly, it kind of depends on the genre. It depends
Death
on.
Can't do an Unplugged.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I mean, they could. It probably just wouldn't. That fucking
They'd have
great.
to really mic up those guitars to keep up with the drums.
But here's the thing, though. There are some bands, and I can think of two off the top of my head, and there's probably hundreds more, but there's two that come to the top of my head, and one being the Lumineers and the other one being of Monsters and Men. They go out there and produce studio albums with electric equipment, and then they perform that way in live shows. However, they're a band that built solely off of being an unplugged, stripped-down artist. Like, you can totally hear that, especially the Lumineers. And a band like that, if you go out there and perform an intimate performance that's just your acoustics, your voices, and some fucking bongos for all I know, if it doesn't sound good, then there's something fucking wrong.
Almost like a Mumford and Sons type situation.
Exactly. Like if you're, Mumford and Sons. Like all, like I mean, we watch we talk about MTV Unplugged and all these different strip sessions, but like even the NPR Tiny Desk sessions. I mean, I've seen like lots of artists go through there, even up to like Mac Miller, do like a stripped down performance in this little tiny bookstore, pretty much. I think it's in New York. And it's a great way to see artists of all different qualities and genres go in there, do a stripped down performance, and a lot of it fucking work. And to me, that can generally show raw talent, but I don't think it necessarily makes or breaks depending on the genre.
Another one too, I don't know if either of you have ever seen it, but the Audio Tree live sessions. You ever watch any of those?
No, I never heard of it.
Yeah, do yourself a favor and check it out on YouTube. It's called Audio Tree Live, and it's just like exactly what you were just saying, Steve. Stripped down sessions with artists, and it's, you know, like professionally produced and stuff, but it's live. And I feel like that type of situation, if you completely bomb a session like that to where it is in a studio type setting and you do have, you know, equipment, but it is just a stripped down version of what you have, and you bomb that, I feel like what you were saying, like that is a 100% you suck. Like, like it's not like, I mean, you can be like, oh, well, you know, I'm not used to playing an acoustic guitar, so, you know, I can't do it.
Yeah, like
they gave you all the opportunities to be good.
Because I base talent off of the idea, like, you know, even if I can think of like golfers, like, you know, there's all this golf equipment out there, but a real talented professional golfer could use a fucking broomstick with a club head and be able to play nearly as well just because they have the talent.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you shouldn't have to use the equipment, rely on the studio and the effects that you're going to get at a live venue and be able to produce that talent. Like another one that off that Tiny Desk Sessions, for instance, that really stood out, like Florence and the Machine. They have a lot of effects in their music. They do a lot of things on stage. But then I saw a stripped down performance with it where it was just Florence Welch, a keyboard, and someone playing the harp. And it was fucking amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Even like Foster the People did one, and it was fucking awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, there's so many that were on there where you get to really see bands that like have a lot of effects in their audio music, and then you get to see a stripped down version of it with just what they're left at their disposal, and comes out really well most of the time.
Well, I guess that kind of wraps that one up. I guess the general consensus is unplugged or stripped down sessions. Well, unplugged sessions can't determine a good or bad band. However, a stripped down session, when given, you know, I guess let's say like 70% of their arsenal, if you do not perform up to the standard at a stripped down session, then that can 100% determine whether or not you are good or worth your weight. Can we all agree on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's just have another general consensus. Favorite unplugged stripped down album?
Album, or do you just want to pick just in general?
Album.
Alice in Chains Unplugged.
It's got to be actually... Okay. Connor?
Does it need to be said?
Yeah, mine doesn't need to be said either. We already know what it is. It's a 2-on-3 majority over here.
MTV Unplugged in New York.
Yeah, it's 2 against 3 in the majority over here.
Hey, that's
I was going to say, though, you know what show I did like that I think was kind of a happy medium?
What?
VH1 Storytellers.
Yeah. Storytellers.
That was like
Yeah.
stripped down performances, but you could still use electrics and yada yada.
Foo Fighters
you know?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you right
Storytellers was
now,
good.
yeah, cable television really fucked up with the way they messed with VH1 and MTV.
Oh my God,
telling you that
dude.
right now.
Yeah.
Fucking ridiculous.
You want to talk about they're making vinyls popular again. I think they're talking about remaking like Dunkaroos. They got Cinnamon Toast Crunch or the
shit.
French Toast Crunch. All these '90s gear coming back out. MTV needs to just go total hipster and bring back the era of music television.
I agree.
Yes.
That's my
Yes.
proposal.
I guess let's get into our personal suggestions for this week. Who wants to go first? Or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
My suggestion for this week is to check out the Coheed and Cambria 2004 album, In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3. The song...
Oh, you were serious about that, huh?
The song to check out is A Favor House Atlantic.
Oh,
This
wow.
is like early Coheed and
bringing
Cambria.
it
Yeah,
back.
this is early Coheed and Cambria, not fucking Welcome Home or The Suffering and, shit off like their later albums that, everyone liked and, whatever, because it was popular. This is the kind of shit to where you had to be like a Coheed and Cambria fan or at least have some sort of knowledge within their world to like their music. And I feel like A Favor House Atlantic is one of those songs to where if you're into this type of like progressive type rock music, this is something to check out. And plus, I think Coheed and Cambria is a pretty good fucking band. No one can tell me otherwise.
Yeah, I actually like that song. I'm not even gonna lie, I like that song a
Dude,
lot.
it's good. And they're another band
Yeah.
too. Like they did a Guitar Center sessions and it was a stripped down setting, dude, and they are fucking incredible. They did A Favor House Atlantic and it's really good.
Yeah.
Go check that out on
Yeah, get
YouTube,
that.
son. So who wants to go next?
Connor.
All right, I'll go. All right, I got the fourth Breeders album from 2008, Mountain Battles. I got this around when it came out, and I hadn't listened to it in quite a while, and I gave it a listen, and it's pretty damn good. I gotta say,
Mountain Battles, huh?
Yeah, I like it.
I'm gonna add
classic
that because I haven't really listened to much from the Breeders other than their first. Actually, Pod I listened to, and as well as Last Splash.
What's your song?
It's like
Connor?
not. There's a couple good ones. The best one to check out, I guess, is Overclease, the first one. But it's a good album. Like it's really just maybe a hair, not a hair away from being as good as Last Splash. Like if it had a cannonball or something, like, you know what I mean, that would have like really taken it up, but it's not like they weren't gearing up for hits on this album at all.
I'm gonna have
It's
to
just
check that out.
straight up Breeders.
Nice.
None of the commercial nonsense.
Awesome. What do you got, Steve?
So I've just noticed I haven't recommended much punk rock music in my time of being on this show, which happens to be my second favorite genre of music. I'm going to recommend the 1980 album by the band The Circle Jerks. The album is entitled Group Sex, featuring the greatest singer ever to premiere on a Black Flag album, that being Keith Morris. The song is, I'm highly recommending, is track 5. It's called Back Against the Wall.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, did Cage the Elephant cover that?
Exactly. Fucking Cage the Elephant.
What's so funny?
Nice.
They're another.
I like Cage.
I like their earlier
dude,
music.
come on.
I definitely like that. I definitely
Bro,
like
their
when they
second
first came out.
their second album's fire.
Is it?
No lie.
What? Thank
yeah,
you,
it's a-
happy birthday?
Yeah, I fucking love that album.
I'll
All right,
have to listen
hipster.
to it again. I'm not really a fucking fan of it.
Check out Always Something.
Shake Me Down.
Yeah, that's on there. It's a great song. It's Beatles Good, a band with a team of professional songwriters, top of the class.
Stay tuned for on the episode where we investigate if Cage the Elephant writes their own music.
Oh, they do, bro. They're the real deal.
Our group suggestion for this week is to check out the Drew Stone directed documentary, Who the Fuck Is That Guy? The Fabulous Journey of Michael Alago. This is a documentary that follows around Michael Algo, who is a basically an A&R rep that wound up signing a shit ton of bands, ranging from White Zombie to Cyndi Lauper, Nina Simone to Metallica.
Phil Anselmo's.
Phil Anselmo. This dude has worked with like everybody. I mean, like pretty much music that we all like it's all because of this dude. And it's definitely something to check out on Netflix, our Netflix movie recommendations. But that's another episode of the Quarantine Chronicles for the books. As always, you can get us on our social medias, Instagram and Twitter at RATM Podcast, our Facebook at facebook.com/RATM Podcast. And if you have any submissions for music or questions, concerns, suggestions, whatever, you can get us at ratmpodcast@gmail.com. But once again, this is Rage Against the Mainstream signing off. I'm Bill.
I'm Canner.
I'm Steve.
Have a good night, guys. Thank you for listening.